Hey guys, any minute now the vote should be happening. Okay. Confidence in the Prime Minister and government, guys. Look what's happening. The vote of non-confidence is happening right now. So I don't know, put the screen. It's not like obstructing the view people can see when they tune in. So yeah, I have to mute their little nice music because we got a copyright flag last time, letting the public broadcast violins play. So yeah, we're just waiting for this vote to happen now, I guess. But wow, we have 1,100 people watching right now. That's crazy. That's more numbers than we've ever had. So thanks, guys. If you like the channel, like and subscribe. We'd love for you to stick around. Let's see what happens.
I don't know who
here,
that lady
guys.
is. I have no idea. I don't think she'd be a war criminal and have the Nobel Peace Prize. That'd be impressive if it was.
We'll see. I'm still like, my heart's going. Like I'm like, you know, it's Christmas. It's the season of miracles. Season of miracles, man.
No. There's no point of order at this point.
I don't have any. I've like no expectations here at all.
Oh wait, what's going on?
Before the House proceeds to the taking of this deferred
Pierre Poilievre.
Colleagues.
I want to hear first.
Proceeds to taking this deferred recorded division, I wish to remind honourable members of the following passage from House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, at page 587, under the heading "Decorum during the taking of a vote." Quote: From the time the Speaker begins to put the question until the results of the vote are announced, members are not to enter, leave, or cross the House, nor may they make any noise or disturbance. End quote. Je suis convaincu que les honorables.
I'm convinced that honourable members will comply to this indication to make sure that our operations can happen in an ordinate way.
La question est la...
The question is as follows. Mr. Poilievre, seconded by Mr. Muse, moved that 1. Whereas the leader of the New Democratic Party said he ripped up his supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government. 2. Whereas the NDP leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people.
3. Whereas the NDP leader said that the Liberal government will always cave to corporate greed and always step in to make sure the unions have no power, in response to the Liberal Labour Minister's referrals to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board that ordered the workers of Teamsters Canada Rail Conference and the ILWU 514 to resume their duties, violating their right to strike. Puis-je dispenser? Therefore, the House agrees with the NDP leader, and the House proclaims that it has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. La période.
The 10-minute voting period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favour of the motion will please rise.
Okay, here we go.
Monsieur Deltel.
Monsieur Deltel.
Mrs. Stubb.
Okay, I'm going to shrink the chat here, guys, a little bit so people can see.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Upal.
Mr. Upal.
Miss Landsman.
Ms. Landsman.
Mr. Hallan.
Mr. Hallan.
Miss Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Ms. Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Barrett.
Mrs. Gray.
Mrs. Gray.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Barlow.
Miss Dancho.
Ms. Dancho.
Mr. Ellis.
Mr. Ellis.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Kimmich.
Mr. Kimmich.
Mr. Kurek.
Mr. Kurek.
Mr. Jennis.
Mr. Jennis.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Duncan, Stormont Dundas, South Gungary.
Mr. Duncan, Stormont Dundas, South Gungary.
Monsieur Bertol.
Monsieur Bertol.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Chong.
Mr. Chong.
Mr. Abul Taif.
Mr. Abul Taif.
Mrs. Kuzi.
Mrs. Kuzi.
Mr. Seaback,
Mr. Seaback,
Miss Ferrari,
Miss Ferrari,
Mrs. Bloc,
Mrs. Bloc,
Mr. Stewart, Miramichi Grand Lake,
Mr. Stewart, Miramichi Grand Lake,
Mr.
Vote of
Chan,
non-confidence happening right now, guys.
Mr. Viss,
Mr. Viss,
Mr.
You
Doyle,
feeling the suspense, Justice?
Mr. McCall,
My heart's going. I'm going, dude. Like,
Really?
it's
Mr.
going.
Lloyd,
Mr. Strahl,
Mr. Strahl,
I want to see what happens here.
Mr. Brassard,
Mr. Aitchison,
Mr. Aitchison,
I have zero expectations for this.
Mr. Holbach,
Mr. Holbach,
Mr. Morans,
Mr. Morantz,
Mrs. Roberts,
Mrs. Roberts,
Mr. Malillo,
Mr. Malillo,
Mr. Tucker,
Mr. Tucker,
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman,
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman,
Madame Vien,
Madame Vien,
Mr. Patzer,
Mr. Patzer,
Mrs. Gallant,
Mrs. Gallant,
Mr. Shipley,
Mr. Shipley,
Mr. Muse,
Mr. Muse,
Don't
Mr.
worry,
Reddicock,
Christina. They'll call another one
Mr. Van
soon.
Popta,
Mr. Van Popta,
Mr. Waugh,
Mr. Waugh,
Mr. Slade,
Let's see how LeBlanc votes, guys. It's going to be the biggest tell here.
Mr. Calkins,
Miss Rude,
Miss Rude,
Mr. Genereux,
Monsieur Genereux,
Mr. Genereux,
Mr. Genereux,
Mr. Major,
Mr. Major,
Mr. Davidson,
Mr. Davidson,
Mr. Martel,
Mr. Martel,
Mr. Gould,
Mr. Gould,
Mr. Caputo,
Mr. Caputo,
Mr. Epp,
Mr. Epp,
Miss Rempel Garner,
Ms. Rempel Garner,
Mr. Zimmer,
Mr. Zimmer,
Mr. Majumdar,
Mr. Majumdar,
Mr. Cram,
Yeah, Terry.
Mr. Tolmie,
Mr. Tolmie,
Mrs.
It's funny seeing some liberals in the chat. Welcome.
Mr. Dreshin, correction, Mr. Bragdon,
Mr. Bragdon,
Mr. Dalton,
Mr. Dalton,
Mr. Nayman,
Don't worry, guys. He's not getting
Mrs.
kicked
Falk,
out.
Battlefords Lloydminster,
Mrs. Falk,
Or sorry, I won't ruin
Mr.
the
McLean.
suspense.
Mr. McLean,
Mr.
That's
Weber,
just Saul's
Mr.
opinion.
Weber,
Mr. McGuire,
I just doubt it. I mean, maybe.
Mr. Reed,
Mr. Shields,
I've been proven wrong.
Shields,
Mr.
on predictions.
Faulkner,
Mr. Falk-Palache,
Mr. Motts,
Mr. Mott,
Mr. Williamson,
Mr. Williamson,
Mr. Arnold,
Mr. Arnold,
Mr. D'Entremont,
Mr. D'Entremont,
Mr. Morrison,
Here, I'm still listening. Just give me a
Mr.
sec.
Soroka,
Mr. Soroka,
Mrs. Vecchio,
Mrs. Vecchio,
Mr. Carey,
Mr. Carey,
Mr. Vidal,
Mr. Vidal,
Mr. Dowdle,
Mr. Dowdle,
Mr. Lake,
Mr. Lake,
Mr. Vierson,
Mr. Vierson,
Mr. Ruff,
Mr. Ruff,
Mr. Fast,
Mr. Fast,
Mr. Leipert,
Mr. Lightbert,
Mr. Leslie,
Mr. Leslie,
Mr. Giovanni,
Mr. Giovanni,
Mr. Stewart, Toronto St. Paul's,
Mr. Stewart, Toronto St. Paul's,
Mr. Terrien,
Monsieur Terrien,
Madame
Yeah, I think so,
Larouche,
Great
Madame
Dominion.
Larouche,
Or I think they already had
Madame Chabot,
2, didn't they?
Madame Chabot,
They're voting yes! LeBlanc's voting yes, guys! LeBlanc's voting yes!
Mr. Sorbier,
Oh, yeah! Suck it, Saul! Suck it! Something's happening! Let's go! LeBlanc just voted yes!
If the Bloc votes yes, can they win it by themselves?
Colleagues,
If the independents and the rogue liberals vote yes,
Oh, that's not going to happen.
let's
Or
see,
maybe.
let's see what happens. Now my heart's real going. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
can I ask the honourable member, please, from Miramichi Grand Lake to please not take the floor?
Sorry, Rob. Ruining this for you guys.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à la...
I'm on the edge of my seat, literally.
Mr. Blair,
Mr. Blair,
Mr. Holland,
Mr. Holland,
This is the closest it's ever been, right?
Mr. McKinnon,
If LeBlanc's voting yes, then yes.
Ms. Anand,
And they just did. The ones that are there just voted yes.
Brani,
Miss Sachs,
Ms. Sachs,
They actually put their money where their mouth is.
Miss Groh,
Well, the Bloc has something to gain from this too, right? That's what I've been saying. Is
Welcome to the 1,800
conservatives in the
people.
Bloc.
Welcome to the 1,800 people watching right now.
Miss
This is a
Savota,
Oh, yeah.
historic moment in
This is
Canadian history
as
right now.
exciting,
Madame Bibot,
Madame Bibot,
as exciting as Canadian politics gets right here.
Miss
Hey,
Jazza,
get out of here.
Jazik,
Monsieur Dubourg,
Monsieur Dubourg,
Cat's gonna knock my water
Madame
over.
Lalonde,
Madame Lalonde,
Mr. Sheehan,
Mr. Sheehan,
Miss Jones,
Miss Jones,
Miss O'Connell,
Miss O'Connell,
See what happens, guys.
Mr. Oliphant,
Mr. Garrettson,
Mr. Gerritsen,
Mr. Lamoureux,
Mr. Lamoureux,
Madame Fortier,
Madame Fortier,
Mr. Fragiscados,
Mr. Fagascados,
Monsieur Lauzon,
Mr.
That's what I'm saying. Is either way, it's a feather in their cap.
Monsieur El Khoury,
Monsieur El Khoury,
Mr. Fonseca,
Let's see. This has got a
Mr. Hardy,
possibility.
Hardy,
Mr. Yakono,
Monsieur Yakano,
Mr. Johari,
Mr. Johari,
Mr. Lightbound,
Mr. Lightbound,
Mr. Nagvi,
Mr. Nakvi,
Mr. Badaway,
Mr. Badaway,
Mrs. Atwin,
Mrs. Atwin,
Mr. Sarai,
Yeah, don't worry, Henry. It's not over yet. I'm sure we won't get anything else done either
Mr. Sanson,
It's all
after
good.
this.
It's all good, Michael. Me too.
Monsieur Seri,
But I'm also on the edge of my seat because I'm excited.
Mr. McDonald Avalon.
Mr. McDonald Avalon.
Mr. McKinnon Coquitlam Port Coquitlam.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Mr. McLeod.
Mr. McLeod.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Morrissey.
Monsieur Robillard.
Mr. Robillard.
Madame Shanahan.
Madame Shanahan.
Mr. Sorbera.
Mr. Sorbera.
That would be crazy, Terry.
The bloc voted yes.
Became the opposition.
So let's see what happens, guys.
Mr. Chang.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mrs. Zayed.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, maybe the liberals and the NDP will just join the conservatives.
My wife's just shaking her head at me.
Mr. Van Bynen. Mr. Baines.
Mr. Bain.
Miss Bradford.
Miss Bradford.
Mr. Chahal.
Mr. Shahal.
Madame Chatel.
Madame Chateau.
Mr. Hanley.
Mr. Hanley.
Miss Kayabaga.
Let's go, guys.
Baga.
Madame Lapointe.
Today, Christmas miracles.
Mr. Young.
1,900 people watching right now
Miss
with
Taylor
us.
Roy.
Miss Taylor Roy.
Miss Thompson.
Miss Thompson.
Mr. Carr.
Mr. Carr.
Miss Gainey.
As much as I'm not a fan of the nicknames that Poilievre does, the Maserati Marxist is really funny.
Miss Matheson.
Oh, we all knew.
NDP is
We
not
all
gonna
knew.
vote to remove the
We all
Liberals.
knew you're gonna vote no NDP, but that doesn't matter. Let's see what
I have nothing to gain from it.
the rogue liberals. Let's see what happens when we get to the electronic vote, guys. It's gonna be starting soon. Electronic voting.
Oh yeah, I have read that, Terry. The liberals voting against them, right? Didn't
Well, they were standing up for the nays.
Mr. Johns.
Mr. Johns.
Miss
Yeah.
McPherson.
See, they're voting no.
McPherson.
Obviously,
Miss
we all knew that would happen.
Miss Gazan.
But let's see what happens with the rogue liberals
Mr. McGregor.
now that the Bloc is voting
Mr.
yes.
Backrack.
Mr. Backrack.
Yeah, don't let that dopamine go away yet.
Blaney.
Madame Hughes.
Madame Hughes.
Mr. Bulris.
Monsieur Boulidis.
Mr. Angus.
Mr. Angus.
Miss Zarillo.
Ms. Zarillo.
Miss Kwan.
Ms. Kwan.
Miss May Sanish Gulf Islands.
Ms. May Sanders Gulf Islands.
Mr. Morris.
Mr. Morris.
Yeah, we all knew that the Green Party was going to vote no. Like, there are 2 seats.
La Chambre attend.
The House will now wait for the electronic voting period to end before resuming its proceedings.
I was just imagine somebody frantically trying to get their computer to work so they can send the vote in. That'd be funny, eh?
The
Someone's
Bloc's
computer
all
isn't
voting
working.
yes. They're all voting yes, guys. The Bloc's all voting yes. They're all voting yes. All of the Bloc. Yeah, like I'm super excited for this. This is crazy. We've got 2,100 people watching this right now, which is a record for our channel. Anything feels possible at this point, guys. Let's see what happens. Watch for any yays.
Justus is on
liberals.
cloud 9 right now.
Dude, I'm just, you don't understand, dude. This has been like a year buildup of just constant tease after tease to something possibly happening. Still, I like. Let's see what it is. Let's wait for the results, guys. Like, watch for any yays over a red banner here. They will see how Wayne Long and the other rogue liberals vote.
Well, Wayne might vote.
Oh, Mario
He's
showed
already
up and
stuck
voted
his-
yes. Mario showed up and voted yes from the Bloc. It's all good, guys. You want to be a bunch of negative Nellies? That's fine. Like Kevin Belong voting yes.
Guys, if you believe, anything can happen.
If you believe you can
Like-
achieve.
Angels in the outfield.
You know what? I believe in Christmas miracles, okay? Like, miracles
Okay.
happen. Sometimes, occasionally. You know, it wouldn't. Oh, Randy showed. Obviously, Randy's going to vote no. Yeah, Pablo voted no. Well, we kind of saw that coming, honestly, because he's independent.
Pablo's
now, but-
independent, right?
Yeah, but he used to be a liberal, and he stepped down because he wants to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Quebec or something. That's what he stepped down for.
Hmm.
So far, all the liberals have been saying nay. Oh, we got Elaine Reyes, independent, voting yes. And we've got Han Dong. I didn't even know he was still an MP. He voted nay, really? So the compromised MP that we all knew, who's for sure been found guilty of foreign interference. Oh, 2,400
found
people
guilty
watching.
of foreign interference?
Well, he was complicit. He was definitely. Anyways, I'll stop talking and get back to this.
I wish to inform the House that the electronic voting period has ended. If members were not able to vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raise hand function and the chair will recognize them.
Oh, okay. It's good they got a way to deal with that.
I was just saying, Mrs. Fry?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my app doesn't seem to want to work, so I am voting nay. Thank you.
Come on.
Then I have the the honourable member from London for London Fanshawe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because of the noise, I could not hear if my vote was cast, so I would like to confirm that it was called and voted. I vote nay.
Indeed, it was called and cast.
The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Don't count her vote because of that.
152,
I declare the motion defeated.
Yeah. So, but look at this, guys. 152. We were only 20. Like, literally, that's the closest it's ever been. Like, in Trudeau's leadership, this is the closest the results have ever been. So, yeah, it didn't happen. I got a little bit too carried away there for sure. But the Bloc voting yes was huge. That was huge. That was the biggest improvement or development I've seen in this motion, in this happening all year. So I'm, you know what, guys, we're one step closer. We're one step closer to getting that election we all want. But we'll let the feed play for a little bit here, guys, and see what gets
one
said.
Step. Yeah,
I see that
we've won over the Bloc, guys.
The honourable leader of the opposition is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, you went out of your way before the vote to point out that members.
Trudeau comes out on top again.
Okay, let's just let's hear him.
This
talk.
guy can't lose.
Shut up, Saul. Shut up, Saul. I want to hear him talk.
During the vote, I did note that the NDP leader came in right in the middle of the vote, having missed the fact that the vote was on his own words. Would you please call him to order for having had his team vote against his own words?